forward to introduce Tammy Adcock. She is our...
It's okay if I leave this off.
Yeah, you can take that off. She is our spotlight speaker today, and she is here with Adcock Coaching.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Well, as you guys have gone around the room and talked about the different types of coaching you guys have done, hopefully I think probably this morning you'll hear about a different type of coaching that is very up and coming, but is very new so it's basically just kind of groundbreaking. I actually do high conflict divorce coaching. And so in a nutshell, what a lot of people don't understand is it does not take two people to be in a high conflict divorce. It takes one person. Many times in the cases that I work for, it's domestic violence. And so if you bring up anything in regards to child abuse or domestic violence, you're automatically labeled high conflict. And many times, many times I find out that the protective parent is the one who ends up losing custody. Looks like the frantic one, points out the things that the children have pointed out to them, and the abuser is like, I don't know what you're talking about. So basically that's in a nutshell what I'll be talking about, but I'll first start with some history. My entrepreneurship journey started when I was 13. My dad has worked in door-to-door sales my basically entire life. He just retired a couple years ago. And so what he did is he worked with youth. If you've seen like the Blue Bible Stories in doctor's offices from years ago, he sold the hardbacks of those, and then he started a youth program probably about 30 years ago because he retired at 27 years, and he helped youth pay their way through private college or private high schools. And so then he also would go around and negotiate with all of those schools around the United States that they would match those students' scholarships so that they, especially the ones who couldn't financially afford to be in private school. And then he would also negotiate across the United States, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, scholarships for them to be matched to go to whichever college they chose. Or if they chose to go to a community college, he would also help with that too. It was just whatever worked for their family. So my father did that for 27 years, and I came in and worked with him for 7, of course, because, you know, who doesn't want to tag around with mom and dad? So in that experience, I feel like my whole layout of my career, my life, went into that. I learned how to talk to people anytime, any place, anywhere, just like my father. They basically kind of just threw me out there when I started because, well, your dad's the director, so you must know what you're doing. So there was not a whole lot of training. I basically self-trained, self-taught. But I'm proud to say that I was the top salesperson the majority of those 7 years. I loved what I did. They tried to bring me into a leadership mentor role, and I wanted nothing to do with that. It was kind of like it wasn't my personality to really train somebody else. I just knew how to do it because that's what my father did. So I enjoyed all that I learned about that. Going door to door for hours, either not finding people home, people slamming the door in your face, dog bites, you name it, different things. And so I guess I learned just to roll with any type of situation. So as I did that, I got here to Lincoln. My sister lived here, and I really wasn't that excited about college. It just wasn't my thing. I made it through high school. And I knew that I wanted to stay into some type of entrepreneurial work. But as we all do, we go to standard college, we get a standard job, and I was in banking, and I was absolutely just miserable. It wasn't my thing. I was behind the scenes auditing loans, so I wasn't working with people. And I was like, if this is all I can get, I'm going back to school. Because then again, you always think the route is to go to school. So I got my bachelor's degree, but now I was paying for it. So I was like, okay, I gotta get straight A's. And so my education mindset just grew and grew. And so I loved, I know, kind of crazy, loved taking tests, loved writing papers. So as soon as I graduated, I went straight on to get my master's degree. But at this point in time, I was already starting the process of a domestically abusive divorce. And so it was just me and my oldest daughter of what I thought was going to be complete. And needless to say, I graduated with my master's, decided that I would take my abuser back, and we went on to have 2 more children. And I had been in Mary Kay, so that was where I guess I would say I had enhanced my skills working with people, and I loved it. Just loved it and thrived at it, did it for 17 years, but was really never able to, I was more controlled about leaving my home environment and throwing parties and who was gonna take care of our kids. And so after 7 years, I believe, I finally ventured out on my own and left for the last time, thinking, okay, I'm gonna start a new life. My whole life, all I wanted to do was be a mother. And so I was ecstatic with the little ones I had, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old in tow. We moved out, and 2 weeks after our divorce, my apartment burned completely. We lost everything we took with us. And so that was, I guess you would say, more of, I feel like, my skills that taught me to pull myself up every single time. My number 1 motto is you fall down 9 times, you get up 10. And so at that point in time, I was just determined to take care of my kids. And so what I did is I learned how to budget, which I think works really well in being an entrepreneur also. And I said, I'm gonna stay at home with my kids until they're all school age. So I then decided, well, with this master's degree, what do I want to do with it? And I thought, I want to be a teacher. So I applied for SEC, and 11 years later, I taught professional selling, customer service, communications, marketing, and subbed for all the rest, and loved it. It was constantly with people, and I was basically enhancing the skills that I needed to be an entrepreneur again. But again, was just kind of keeping it safe because I was a single mom of 3. And then just one day, I had made the decision that when my boss at SEC, I don't know if you guys know Terry Tiedemann, when she was ready to retire, I said, that's my cue to be done with this. I said, I'm gonna push myself out of the nest. And sure enough, at the right time that all of this was falling into place, Terry decided to retire and just be a teacher. So I was like, oh man, be careful what you wish for. So as Terry was exiting, so was I. And so I kind of did a little bit of, I was working at LPS, and I love the children, but again, that's just not where my heart was. And this whole time, I had been honing in on my skills of research. Most people call me the FBI agent mother. And just getting every book I could get my hands on to learn more about what I was dealing with. Because through all of this situation, I had been in court for over a decade. And just been turned financially upside down. You would pay a retainer, bring all your documentation. They'd look at it and say, well, we can use like this much of like this much. But I've already gone through your retainer because the other attorney has called 100 times because that's what they do. And so it's like, oh shit, where am I supposed to come up with more money? I gotta find out where to come up with money. So come up with another retainer, go through the same thing over and over and over for 10 years. Finally, I said, a friend on Facebook, more of an acquaintance, I'd never met her in person, said, have you ever looked into narcissism? And didn't even know it was a personality disorder, didn't know anything about it. And I started looking up the definition, and I said, that's not my situation. You know, he's just difficult to deal with, but you know, hopefully he'll get over this and we'll just go on to parent our kids. Well, then I just happened to look at another definition page, and it was like bing, 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 everything. Then I looked up sociopath, 18 out of 20. And I was like, okay, she's on to something here. She introduced me to a group in California who I've grown to just absolutely love and be part of their community. Purchased all of her books about divorcing a narcissist and what that was like, and came to the realization that that's what I was doing. and that it was never going to stop. The divorce is one thing, it's painful, it's not anything a family would want to do. You try and do things what's best for your children, but what I didn't realize is my battle had just started the day I divorced him, and it was the most dangerous. And so I have basically self-taught how to document what evidence works in court, what doesn't work in court. And so the organization in California started a coaching business, and it just went gangbusters. And it was like she couldn't even coach enough people. And so she finally said, you know what, I am passing the torch to you guys. She said, I'm starting a certification program, and then I will just start dispersing my clients. I will put you on a database so that people already know who you are. You come with a reputable reputation because of all the books and everything that she had done. And so I went through her certification this summer, still being like, wow, I'm making this investment. You know, what if I don't do anything with this investment? And I tell you what, it's the best investment I have ever made. It was one retainer out of all the retainers I paid in 10 years. So when I tell you, sometimes people are like, you know, should I get this training? Should I do this? If you're really into that, I promise you that will come back tenfold. Because if I had known everything that I went through in that training, we had forensic accountants, you know, like forensic psychologists. She got everybody best from East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, and trained us. And so, like I said, if I would have just, you know, I didn't know then, but if I would have just spent that dollar amount, man, I would have probably saved almost all of my $100,000 that I spent, and still have not basically gotten to an end in sight. My youngest has 7 more years to go. But it taught me all the strategies I needed to know. And so, of course, coming from a family that always loves to give back to community, I said, this is my calling. I said, after everything else I've done, Mary Kay for 17 years, selling books door to door for 7 years, this is something I can dig into, I can help women. And I always feel the concept, men or women, that when someone has helped you, you turn around and you lend a hand to the next person that didn't have what you had. And so every year I've been a team captain for Friendship Home. Never use them, but I believe in what they do. Voices of Help helped me for years. In fact, I just saw the lady that was my help from like 10 years ago. And and they don't like acknowledge who they are, so that when you're with people, you don't know who you're talking to. But was just about in tears in her mask because she's known my kids since they were this little and stuff. So I meet with her next week to be able to leave packets and business cards for everybody that goes through there, because their initial stop, emergency, help you with a phone, help you with classes or whatever, but it's not a long-term thing to help you with. So that is where it came to coaching. My coaching, again, is high conflict certified coach. And so what I will be doing is basically being part of a team with their attorney, and typically with a counselor, because many times in that situation, you are not prepared to go in front of a judge. The judge sees you as anxious, as overprotective, and they give you plenty of names. And so typically it will be our responsibility to say, okay, I can coach you, but I'm recommending probably that you should at least go talk to somebody, because we are not therapists. I definitely don't claim to be a therapist. And we are not attorneys, and so we cannot give legal advice. And so with their attorney, maybe instead of spending a $10,000 or $15,000 retainer and throwing all these documents and then being like, but I don't know. I have 20 years of stuff that I don't even know what's in this pile, but maybe there's something we can use in court. And the attorney comes back and says, sorry, there's nothing we can use in court, but I'm out of retainer and I need more money. So that is my goal, to be a much more affordable resource to them before they get to their attorney, and also help to reel in their expectations. No offense to anybody if you work in the court system here, but it is very broken, and it was created that way to continue to keep people coming back to court over and over again. There's not really a solution. They're not really looking for one. And the concept is, well, you married this person, so figure it out. It's not our job to figure it out for you. If you want us to, this is our fee. This is what we're going to charge. So basically, in a nutshell, that's what I do. I've come across some super amazing women. I mean, of all education levels, of all financial levels, all within that same. Most of the situations that I will be dealing with is people that have been in domestic abuse with some form of personality disordered individual. And so just helping educate them on that. My big picture goal is to teach classes, to speak publicly. And again, like I said, I got that from my father. So that's always been something that I've wanted to use, and I'm getting the opportunity. And then along with that, in speaking, I also want to raise like some kind of nonprofit. That's something you and I are going to talk about. So that there's so many scholarships given out every year here in Nebraska, so that there is women who could not even begin to afford an attorney, much less afford me at a much more reasonable cost, but that they will actually be able to get the services, and so that they know there's some kind of relief and help at the end of the tunnel. So that's kind of mine. As far as they said to talk about like ups and downs, half of my adulthood, just basically finally pushing it and saying I'm going to do this. But I know it's kind of hard to believe, but I feel absolutely blessed to have gone through this, what they would say, pure hell. I don't know if we can use that, but because without it, I wouldn't have all the knowledge to help the women that I'm helping. And I tell you what, the other day I had a lady, she said, I can't thank you enough. I just cannot thank you for what you've done for me. I found her like 3 shelters. She lives out of town. And just basically sat down and she said, I said, I'm just gonna disclose, I know what I'm talking about because I've lived this. And so I was helping her with it, and she said, I sure hope I'm not traumatizing you. And so when you come together and you realize in a community that you're not alone, that is the biggest thing. And like I said, I love Nebraska, and Nebraska's about community. And there's been so much more information in the media right now, which has really helped because, like I said, most people haven't heard of a divorce coach. They just hear of a general divorce coach, and they're like, what can you really do for us? But the media has really helped out a lot with all that's going on, unfortunately, with Gabby Petito and many other cases. There's a movie on Netflix called Made. And if you ever want to know a real, true version of what domestic abuse looks like, that is pretty much as close as it gets. I basically watched the whole season in one night. But again, like I said, I'm just here to educate the community and help in coaching also remove some of the stigmas behind it. So, do you guys have any questions for me?
I do.
Yes.
How, when you're looking for help, you finally realize you need help and now you're looking around. I was on Voices of Hope board for about 7 years.
I saw that. That's why I recognize your name.
They decided my term was up. That how do you find places like Voices of Hope and Friendship Hope and so on?
That is a good question. And that is part of the problem, is it's difficult. Like, people don't even know what key searches to do for it, much less basically there's a one-stop shop for a lot of different things. Like, when I started with Voices of Hope, there was a list of where you could get resources from. And so basically when I came back much more healed, I realized that a lot of the organizations that they had on there were I went and talked to these people. That wasn't helpful at all. So that's another thing I'll be working with them hopefully on, is finding an actually true list, for example, their attorneys. Because I've been in for a decade. Obviously, I've had more than one attorney, and I've just found the attorneys that are just there to basically bleed you dry. If you look on Facebook, social media, you'll kind of hear the same attorneys over and over again that people are stay away from. And I found a lot of those attorneys, unfortunately, and what they do is they just take what clients give them, but I want a more firm say, when I give you this list, it's because these people understand domestic abuse. It's not just he wants the house, she wants the boat. It's way more than that. So that's part of that education is what I'm hoping to help them with. And I don't know, it's been a while since I've looked at their list. So, but yeah, it's, the stigma too comes with, would someone see me walk in Voices? They're gonna know exactly what that is. You know, I don't want anybody to see me. And a lot of them have to hide. They either have to turn the GPS off on their phone to come get help. So there's just so many dynamics into it that hopefully I'm hoping to help, because they know. When I first met Voices of Hope, they said you have basically the worst case we've ever had here. So, like I said, I'm just looking to give back to my community for that and just bring more awareness. Hopefully down the road, my goal is to have some pretty big billboards from Lamer, have very specific things ready for that around downtown, to bring awareness, because a lot of people, if they've never dealt with cancer in their family, they can say, you know, I'm really sorry to hear that, but they don't really know much about it. It hasn't hit their home. And you hear about so many different things, and I bring up cancer because my sister just went through a double mastectomy and a really bad cancer battle at the same time I'm going through this. It is so much easier for people to talk about cancer, and it's so much easier to be like, we're thinking of you, but we gotta send you a little note so that nobody knows we said we were thinking about you. So that is what I'm trying to do, is bring awareness that some of these things, while everybody has their own things that are big or important to their family, that this is a cultural awareness. And so for me, I have 2 daughters, and that is huge, huge, huge for me to explain to them what healthy relationships are, what seems right, what doesn't seem right. And that's, like I said, right now, last year I had a friend whose daughter was murdered by her abuser. She was 17, just ready to graduate from high school. And so I promised my friend that my business will definitely be out there to advocate in a big way for her daughter, because she didn't get a chance to do anything. So that's kind of the resources. It's kind of hard to find out there, like if you don't know like what you're searching for. So we're hopefully making that better. And on my coaching website, I want to make a lot of links to different references, so that even if maybe they can't afford coaching at the time, I've left them with enough links to books. A lot of people don't know that some of the larger churches like Lincoln Brand, St. Mark's, I'm trying to think of one of the others, a lot of them do like these support groups called Hidden Abuse. And so and some people are like, at that point in time, they're like, I'm not into church. And it's not about being into church. It's just where you know you can go to a private group and maybe just, you know, stay out of the limelight. I basically picked one of the biggest churches here in Lincoln Berean, and I said, I don't know anybody here. I said, this is for me. And so I got to go to all the support groups that they have for addicts and all of the spouses of addicts. And so I was able to finally be comfortable, because so those are the things I just want to, my biggest part is the education piece about it. I know the money comes from coaching, and I get that, but I want to be that education piece. And I feel like the 11 years in education is really, I know how to put curriculum together, I know how to put syllabuses together, and so I'm going to use all of that together along with my sales skills and my people skills, and just go head on with it. So
I'm a member of Messiah Lutheran, and we have a program called Home in a Box.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that or not. Started out with LPS reaching out to one of our members.
Oh, okay.
Around 2 areas. First and foremost, domestic abuse, leaving, and then where do you go? You've got your shelters, but you can't get an apartment, or if you find one, you get some help there. You leave with nothing. I'm reiterating what you already know, but you leave with nothing. And so what we've been, like last year, I think we furnished 50 apartments.
Wow.
And because that, the demand, well, it's a twofold. The other half is we also have immigrants coming in. that just don't have any place to go. And it's going to be more so. They have nothing. And so we furnish everything from furnishings to household goods to everything else along the line. And we leave them with a Bible on the table.
Thank you so much, because I didn't know of anything like that.
I'll get another one of your, we have a leadership team for that. And we have guys who talk on the storage facility on 84th Street there south, on the west side south of A, between A and South. We have two of their largest units. We get donations all the time, and we seek out donations of furniture. People, I've even picked up a few things in our neighborhoods that were sitting curbside. They were very
Right?
usable things.
Right.
Starting out. And so I empathize with what you're going through, what the needs are. But I will give you my card.
Okay, absolutely.
It's a resource that's available.
Absolutely, because most women leave at least 7 times before they leave for good, because they just can't afford housing. The money is tied up or hidden, and so they don't have, like, I had to get a court order to get my own money to get my own first apartment. And so I left with stuff, but I was blessed enough at the time that his family actually paid for my move. And they made sure that I took all of the kids' stuff with me, which we lost in a fire. But so when these women leave, like you said, and don't have anything, most often they go back. But if they had something to help them get started.
They have to find the resources for the apartment. And as far as having to worry about the furnishings,
Right.
initial grocery bag and some of that type of thing, just normal household goods, toilet paper,
Right.
everything.
Right.
We do what we can to we do it 100% all the time. No, but we're there as a resource for them, and that's just exploded in terms of the demand for it. So.
Well, we have a lot of immigrants, because I've worked for LPS, like I said, for the last 3 years also, and so I've dealt with a lot of families. One family actually, we were taking their kids to Friendship Home. I'm like, what a state that we're in as a society, that we're dropping kids off at a shelter. And these kids are like, oh my goodness, I don't want anybody to know that's where I'm at.
That's the other side of it. It's their own personal self-worth.
Yes.
And I won't use the word right, but their own self-worth, self-esteem is critical. And if they can find a place where they can be from there, there's still stigma. But if they can be from there and bring value to themselves and feel that they have value.
Well, and many times for me, it was just like, I don't care what I have, just provide for my kids. I didn't, like 1 year, like I said, I always like to acknowledge the people that help you along the way. 1 year, we were dealing with the situation and the cop showed up. And he said, so how was your year? And of course we're kind of standoffish, because we're like, okay, what did you say that for? And I was like, what does it really matter? We're dealing with a situation of abuse. And I said, it's been rough. And I just didn't say anything else. And he said, I thought so. He said, I saw your Christmas tree and there's nothing underneath it. At 9:30 that night, that police officer came back with presents for all of my children that year. Unfortunately, I was not in the position everything was so foggy at that point in time. I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's still in the force, but he will always be right here for me, always. And for the people who actually, like I said, stop and step aside and acknowledge and are aware of their surroundings. And that's part of what I want is, give the last example. I had a neighbor that I just saw last week. And they're like, oh my goodness, I haven't seen you in years. I said, hi, how are you guys? How's your wife? Blah, blah, blah. And he proceeded to tell me all these things that my abuser had done to his family. And at the end, I thought, how can I use this for good? And I looked at him and I said, hopefully that will help you to be aware that I lived right across the street from you and all those things were happening to me and my children behind closed doors and you guys never knew. And he looked at me and he said, I am so sorry. Hey, I just educated somebody. That's all I needed. That was good enough for me. I didn't have to sit there and, we could share stories all day long. It wasn't about that. It was just when people see things that are just not right, sometimes look a little step further, see if there's something that you can do to help. And at a point in time when you're very scared, I had people that tried to help me get out years before I got out. And I'm just like, I don't know what you're trying to do. You're trying to break up my family, And then now I look back and say, oh, please don't ever let me be one of those persons. Let me have that intuition to help when a situation arises. So.
You may point out earlier, but I think it's important to really know that domestic abuse isn't just being battered.
Right.
You may be with an abuser who never lays a hand on you.
Absolutely.
That it's all mental or both or combination. But I know at one time I assumed when you said domestic abuse that a person was talking about getting up every Saturday night in the ER because their husband had gotten drunk and beaten up. It was years later that I realized some of them are the most charming people outside the house.
They're very charismatic.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And never laid a hand on somebody. But mental abuse is just...
And the abuse typically happens behind closed doors. You don't very rarely see it in public. And the mental abuse in family court is not acknowledged. Emotional abuse is not acknowledged. You can have a psychologist, you can have a therapist. It does not matter unless you see a mark. And the big thing that brought me in the full circle of Nebraska is one of my children had fingerprints from him grabbing them. And the police officer told me, well, the state law is 4 fingers to prove that it was abuse, not 3 fingers. And since you have 3 fingers, we are not prosecuting for your child. So, nope. And I will never forget that. Luckily, I didn't remember that officer's name either. But so it's about education. So I don't want the unrealistic expectations for survivors. They get to court and they finally think there's justice for my kids. Maybe it didn't happen for me, but it will happen for my children. Radical acceptance. There's things like Alcoholics Anonymous prayer, accept the things that I cannot change. And right now, there's things changing and moving in the right direction, but it didn't break overnight. It's not going to get fixed overnight. And so helping them to understand, just because I'm going to court and just because if I have all these pictures of bruises and emails of, harm or I'm going to kill you, that does not mean that anything is going to be done. So it's a whole process and helping them along the way to do self-care. That's another big thing. Not only, like you said, feeling good about themselves, because you feel beaten down for so many years. That's how you're going to portray in court. And so that's my biggest thing. In between coaching sessions, I'm sending my people sayings, encouragement, finding out where they're at emotionally. Not looking for, another coaching session out of them. I'm looking to make sure that they're taking care of themselves so that they can proceed on with what they're doing. And some I'll have short term, some I know I'll have long term. But all of them, like I said, each one reach one. That's kind of my philosophy. Do you have any other questions?
I have a quick question
Yes.
about clients. Did you say you were referred by employers, or how do you get clients?
So basically with us, we have a referral database through the organization that certified us. And you'll see their certification that's on our business cards and whatnot. So there's a referral database, and I'm the only person that I know so far in the state of Nebraska. So that's been helpful. Like I said, we can, since Zoom and COVID, we can meet with anybody anywhere. But I want to specialize in helping people to understand the Nebraska court system, because most people can't specialize in everything. I mean, even lawyers, even insurance agents, aren't licensed in all 50 states many times. So more of what they can expect in the Nebraska courts, because they go to California, Nevada, Colorado, those laws are different. So that's our basic to start with. But again, with my sales background, I plan on working with high conflict divorce attorneys. And when I say high conflict, there's not a sign on the door that says high conflict. I know the questions to ask to see if they know how to deal with personality disordered cases. What's the percentage? I work with Friendship Home. I did a marathon a couple years ago just specifically for post-separation abuse, which is all the time in the court. And so then I got endorsements from Friendship Home and Voices of Hope and the lady who actually certified me. And so, like I said, every here and there where I go, I'm doing some kind of advertising. Clients that I've used, I'm also going to have a referral program. So if they refer somebody to me, then maybe they get like a percentage or a dollar amount off of their next coaching session. So it's going to be within that community, but I also want to go outside of that because many people won't go to those resources. So I've just made myself very visible online and social media. So, and TikTok's kind of big right now about like coaching and stuff. So I plan on probably doing, a lot of people will do like little short trainings of different topics. And so I plan on branching out in the near future with that too. So, but it's always just going with technology and what's new. Got to stay up. So basically just making sure I'm, staying up with the Twitter world, and yeah, got to get back into some of that stuff that was never really important to me, but that's where the marketing is, and that's where the younger generation, and since right now a lot of that domestic violence is focused around the younger generation, you got to go where the younger generation is. So, great question.
You just mentioned in his response that you're the only one here, and speaking as one salesperson to another one. Is there anything you can do to protect your territory or get certified, or is it a wide open?
We're only the second graduating class. So like this program is like the only program that was created like it for our certification. So a lot of people will come along and say, well, I got that, I'm a divorce coach. Well, you can be a tax attorney and then say, well, I can do your divorce for you, but that's not what you specialize in. So my big focus is just explaining the certification that I've gotten specifically to help this specific type of cases. Right, yep. So the uniqueness of this is so different than a life coach, a divorce coach. It's specific, so, but as far as, I don't know, I did Mary Kay for 7 years, and we never really believed about like protecting our territory. You just got to get out there, and since Zoom is the way we do a lot of things, we can go anywhere. And that's the nice thing, because I plan to travel with this too when I speak, and I can do all my coaching sessions from a laptop. So, got that covered from one salesperson to another. I like you. Any other questions, guys? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tammy. You have a gift for you.
For all that coffee I don't drink.
For all, well, you can drink
Hot chocolate.
hot chocolate out of
Yep.
it. There you go. There you go. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I don't know. Did everybody get? I know John didn't get an email this week. Did everybody else?
You were going to talk about next week.
Yep, I'm going to. Yep. So,